Hello, this is Reflect&Connect. I don't remember the number. Um, but it's about the Hemel and Horrigan PDF. Yeah, that one. The focus of the article was mostly about not dealing with, that's a poor way of saying things, was incorporating special needs students into the music classroom. Um, Not only that, but also just making sure that your program is just like inclusive enough to make sure that students can participate in any kind of like aspect that they would like to, that is within like reason and capabilities. um, there's a couple things, mostly, that I think are important to talk about, at least in the beginning of the year, or even as like a beginning teacher, is figuring out what students might need accommodations, and modifications, needed to the curriculum based off of that. Um, Talking to parents beforehand, figuring out, what the child might need, what the child prefers when it comes to like being taught, especially music, if they have an affinity for music. Maybe it's a way for them to like de-stress. Um, it's like, being open to, different things. And speaking of talking to parents, consulting them as well as any school administrator to develop a 504 plan for the student, to help them in their education. Um, it's really it. But I did have something that I wanted to say, like as a connect part of the Reflect and Connect. When I was in high school, there was a student who couldn't necessarily play the instrument correctly. Like the student, it didn't help. They were a lefty, and they really did not like have any kind of poor wording. Let me start over. They couldn't play their instrument to the degree that they wanted to, and you could tell that it was frustrating them a little bit. So something that my teacher did was she took the student aside, talked to them, and they together, with along with the parents, developed a plan for them, to kind of like kickstart their learning a little bit, to make it so that they don't feel like behind or singled out in any kind of way, like with playing exams, which was mentioned. Um, what they did was they set up something where they still would get playing exams. Like, they still get playing tests to determine like, like grading, and seeing how they're progressing as a musician. Um, but it would be not to the same degree as the other students, and the student wouldn't be there. Like when we would do group playing quizzes, they would have their own, that they would do with the teacher, one-on-one individually. So I kind of helped them, and I was friends with this person. Very, very great kid. Very determined. Was a smart kid too. Um, but something about music, with like being like in touch with your fine motor skills, especially as someone who's not really like right hand proficient, I guess, with using the bow and stuff. It's a little bit of a challenge, and I give him credit. He definitely worked very, very hard, at his instrument to be, I guess, at a level that he thought was acceptable. But that came with, setting up plans and stuff, making like deals, making accommodations, modifications, making them feel, not singled out at all, when it comes to like performing or playing like as a group or this and that, because they were very much so capable of playing with the ensemble. It was just whenever like they had to work on like solo rep and stuff, like that was the issue, and they were just nervous playing because they didn't want to be judged on how they played, which, like, it's fair, but it's also very sad that the student, felt that way. Like, you shouldn't have to. I get it, anxiety is a big thing, but still, like, you should feel at least like included enough to where you shouldn't have to be like concerned about that stuff. And schools are making progress with that, with their programs and everything, and that's amazing. That's a great great aspect to have in the school, to make it so all students can play. I remember reading an article about like percussion students, or how would you incorporate them. Student who doesn't have like certain advantages for one reason or another? How would you accommodate them? It's very, very, very insightful stuff, and very important too to know for teaching. Because you're going to come across kids. We're going to come across kids of all different kinds of backgrounds and capabilities and like aspects that make them who they are. And we have to be able to, take it and run with it in stride, to not, disturb the flow of the lesson, the flow of the orchestra rehearsal, and make sure their learning is as streamlined as everyone else's. Yeah, a little long, but I rambled.